At 6, nurses across the UK have voted to strike over pay for the first time in the union's 106-year history. Walkouts could begin by the end of the year and will involve staff from more than half of hospitals and community teams.
The message for everyone today is loud and clear. Hundreds of thousands of nurses have spoken out today and said enough is enough.
We'll look at the impact the strikes could have. Also on the programme, breaking news this afternoon, Russia has ordered its troops to withdraw from the highly prized city of Kherson, captured at the start of the war in Ukraine.
Russia's president left it to his generals to announce the retreat. The Russian commander said that the withdrawal would protect the lives of Russian soldiers and the fighting ability of Russian units.
A sharp fall in the number of burglaries solved by the police. We report from Doncaster, where residents say they've lost confidence in officers. And a man is arrested after eggs were thrown at the King and Queen Consort in York.
And in London, tomorrow's underground strike is to go ahead after transport bosses and unions couldn't reach agreement in a row over job cuts and pension changes.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. Nurses across the UK have voted to strike over pay, with action expected to start by the end of the year. It's the first action of its kind since the Royal College of Nursing was set up more than a century ago. Nurses want a pay rise of 5% above inflation. Walkouts will take place in most but not all hospitals and community teams, but emergency care will still be staffed. Our health editor, Hugh Pym, is here to explain.
Yes, Sophie, under the turnout rules, strike ballots can only take effect if at least half of a local workforce has voted. The result is that in Scotland, nurses in all frontline services at health boards can go on strike. It's the same in Northern Ireland. In Wales, there could now be walkouts at all health boards except one, Aneurin Bevan in the south east. In England, more of a mixed picture. At just over half of patient services, including hospital and ambulance trusts, there can now be strikes by nurses following the votes. They say emergency care will not be affected. For many nurses, it's a call for action on boosting workforce numbers and better pay. Jodie, who's an RCN branch rep, voted for the strike. She says she had to give up her pension contributions.
I couldn't afford to contribute to it anymore at the moment, because it was a choice between either doing that or being in debt every month and getting to the bottom of 2 overdrafts.
Have you and your colleagues thought hard about walkouts affecting healthcare and what that means for patients?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been a patient myself. I've got members of my family who've been patients, and this is why we're going to continue to ensure that staffing is kept safe.
But Ian, who's a nurse in Cornwall, voted against strike action.
I will not walk out. I will offer to work in any department to cover any loss of nurses in that area. I believe it's my duty as my registration as a nurse.
Nurses in Northern Ireland have gone on strike before, but there's never been a UK-wide ballot in the history of the Royal College of Nursing. The union's General Secretary says emergency care won't be affected, though walkouts will lead to postponements of planned treatment. If there are walkouts, wouldn't that make backlogs, long waits for operations and treatment and so on, even worse?
Well, those backlogs are there because of the vacancies in our profession. Those patients are sitting on waiting lists because there aren't the nursing staff to treat them. And this is an opportunity now to address those waiting lists. And that's the reason nurses have spoken up and they've cast those votes. It has not been an easy decision for any nurse.
Plans for organising care on any strike days are now being considered by ministers.
Not every trust supported the ballot action, so we need to look at our contingency planning, working with trusts, working with NHS England in terms of those impacts. And that's why, again, my door is open. I'll be having further discussions with them.
Other health unions are balloting on the same issue or have already voted for strike action. If talks don't get underway, there could be widespread disruption at times next month. Hugh Pym, BBC News.
And you can find out which NHS organisations around the UK nurses have backed strike action using the search tool in the story on the BBC News website. That's bbc.co.uk/news, or you can get there by using the BBC News app. A man has been detained by police after appearing to throw eggs at the King and Queen consort as they were on a walkabout in York. The King was visiting the city to unveil a new statue of his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II. Here's our royal correspondent, Daniela Relf.
A traditional ceremonial arrival, how monarchs have been welcomed to York for centuries. But as King Charles met dignitaries, the first of the eggs was thrown. Then a second, a third just behind him, before a fourth egg lands at his feet. The King glances down, but barely reacts. As in the crowd, police officers surround a man who'd been shouting, "This country was built on the blood of slaves." His words, though, were quickly drowned out by the noisy crowd shouting back, "Shame on you," and "God save the King." A man was removed from the crowd and detained by police. The incident did not interrupt the visit as the royal party moved to York Minster, where in the heavy rain the King unveiled a statue of his mother, a poignant tribute to her 70 years on the throne. These kind of walkabouts have marked the King's reign so far, chatting and getting close to the public. But as we've seen today, they come with risks.
My heart goes out to that person. It was a stupid thing to do, but I don't think in any way it has spoiled the day. But yes, of course, there is always a risk, but I still think it's a small one in our nation.
Today's events are unlikely to impact future royal visits from a new King and Queen who want to be seen. Daniela Ralph, BBC News, York.
Feeling safe in your home should be a given, but residents in one cul-de-sac in Doncaster say they've lost confidence in police officers after a huge spate of unsolved burglaries has left them feeling vulnerable. One woman told the BBC she doesn't sleep at night because she lives in fear of being burgled again. The BBC has learned that the number of break-ins solved by the police has significantly fallen. Last month, police chiefs in England and Wales pledged to send an officer to investigate every single home that was burgled. But as you can see from this graph, the number of charges brought against burglars has dropped significantly. The Home Office says the number of burglaries overall has fallen, but there is more to do. Here's our correspondent Ed Thomas with the latest of a series of special reports on crime and how it affects you.
What to do about Oak Grove.
They took my chains around my neck, my rings, everything off me. And next minute, baseball bat, bang on the head, and knocked me unconscious.
A quiet cul-de-sac in Armthorpe, Doncaster.
I'm not sleeping really, and if I do drift off and I hear a noise, I'm up like a shot. They've tried once, they will try again.
With a story to tell.
Something that I needed to know on my scooter.
About crime and justice.
They say, "Oh, police will be found." You don't see them.
And here's the problem.
You've got to keep your eyes open, you really have.
In the last year and a half, there have been 10 burglaries on or near Oak Grove.
They got in through side window.
But so far, only one has led to a criminal charge.
We had the attempted one at Derrick's. Joseph had a bike tucked into Simon's that tried to get his car.
Bob and Mary say it's gone on for years.
By far, the more serious one was Sharon.
You were in bed with her?
Yeah, frightened her. Because they actually hit her with a piece of 2x2.
Now they've had enough.
You don't see a policeman. You don't see a police car. There's your crime number. Or if they do come out, it's probably next day or 3 days later. It's crap.
And Bob is a retired police officer with 30 years' experience.
How do you smell that response? The policing response?
It's not good enough, is it? The country's broke from top to bottom.
We can reveal the number of suspects charged for burglaries across England and Wales has more than halved in 7 years. While the number of crimes overall has fallen significantly in that time, we've learned that fewer than 1 in 20 now lead to a burglar being charged.
There's somebody always in your property, somebody's always nicking or doing anything they want.
Ring the police.
Hey?
Ring the police.
What for?
For them to come.
Maybe next day, a week after.
Have you got confidence in the police in Armthorpe?
No, I've got no confidence in the police, full stop.
Crime has left some here desperate.
Well, I just didn't want to live. I was so depressed that the doctor had to put me on sleeping tablets.
Sharon was burgled just before COVID.
Seeing this arm, turned my key in back door. So I ran into bedroom under covers. I did like a coward. So I had to be in my bedroom terrified for a 999 call.
Could the police hear the
I
attackers
rang
in
phone
the
all
house?
the time while they were robbing me, while I was going through all my bedroom. And I was fighting while he was taking them off me. And when he put his hands around my neck, first thing I thought, God is going to strangle me. And next minute, baseball bat, bang on the head, and knocked me unconscious.
South Yorkshire Police say detectives investigated the burglary here, but no suspect was identified.
I'm terrified now because I don't sleep. When I go to bed, I have to stay awake all night watching telly till 4 or 5 in the morning when it's daylight.
The BBC also spoke to 2 separate victims in Doncaster for other crimes, who allege police warned them not to carry on with the prosecution.
One said an officer told them, "These people are drug dealers. You can do nothing really. You get such bad retaliation, it's not worth it."
South Yorkshire Police told us they attend every burglary, recent crimes are down, and last month arrested 23 people in connection with drug dealing.
They're crawling round, they're getting whatever they want from the till.
Some say they're close to giving up. This is Bob's pet shop.
They're ransacking all round and they got hold of £50 last time.
Inside, he spent thousands on cameras. Outside, he's bricked up the side window, the main shop front boarded.
Yeah, this is a different one.
All to stop burglars.
This is where I think it's a woman.
How many times has this shop been burgled in the past year?
5.
5 times?
Yeah.
How many people have been caught by the police?
None.
Nobody's been caught?
Nobody's been caught.
How does that leave you feeling?
Horrible. It's got to stage now, I don't even report it to the insurance company. Just easy pickings, that's all it is.
Last month, all police forces pledged to send an officer to every burgled home. But without prosecutions, many victims say confidence is at a low. Ed Thomas, BBC News, Doncaster.
In the United States, the big surge that was predicted for the Republican Party at the crucial midterm elections has not happened. 2 years into Joe Biden's presidency, the battle for control over America's Congress will have a profound impact on what he can achieve from now on. Most of the results are in, but counting is continuing, and the race is incredibly tight. And this is what is up for grabs. The Republicans do look set to take control of the lower house of Congress, the House of Representatives, but by a narrower margin than they had hoped. In the Senate, the Democrats and Republicans each have 48 seats. It's incredibly tight. Democrats need to get to 50 to remain in control. The Republicans were expecting to do much better than this. Several candidates chosen by Donald Trump have been beaten. What will it all mean for Joe Biden and for Donald Trump's future? Here's our North America editor, Sarah Smith.
Pennsylvania delivered the Democrats their best result in an election that was not nearly as bad as they'd feared.
Thank you, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much.
John Fetterman beating a Trump-backed celebrity candidate to turn his state from Republican red to Democratic blue.
We bet on the people of Pennsylvania, and you didn't let us down.
Without the predicted red wave, Republicans like the TV star Dr. Oz, who lost the Senate race in Pennsylvania, is one of many disappointments for his party. Donald Trump was not standing, but he still had a lot to win or lose. He's getting ready to launch another run at the White House next week. Watching some of his hand-picked candidates get knocked out was not part of this plan.
Well, I think if they win, I should get all the credit, and if they lose, I should not be blamed at all, okay? But it'll probably be just the opposite.
The Republican who really came out looking like a winner was Ron DeSantis, re-elected as governor of Florida with a hugely increased majority. We know he's thinking about running for president. He now looks well placed to challenge Trump for the Republican nomination. 2 more years, they're chanting, hoping their governor will be heading to the White House in 2024.
Thanks to the overwhelming support of the people of Florida, we not only won election, we have rewritten the political map.
Problems with voting machines in Arizona were resolved. Officials say no one lost the chance to vote. But the conspiracy theories have started already.
They say that the machines aren't working. They say that they're running out of paper in different locations throughout different states. There's a lot of bad things going on.
We had a big day today, and don't let those cheaters and crooks think anything different. Don't let them doubt. Don't let them put doubt in you.
Carrie Lake, the Trump acolyte running for governor in Arizona, doesn't know yet if she has won or lost. It could be days before we get that result, or learn who's won the crucial Senate seat in that state.
Gosh, this is close.
In Georgia, the two Senate candidates seem to be neck and neck. It is almost certain they'll have to compete in a fresh runoff election next month.
But when you wake up tomorrow, we will be in the majority and Nancy Pelosi will be in the minority.
A new dawn in Washington sees the Republicans almost certainly taking control of the House of Representatives. And that means they'll be able to block almost every piece of legislation President Biden proposes. Republicans may be disappointed they didn't make the gains they'd hoped for, but it appears they will have the power to frustrate the president's agenda for the next 2 years. While Democrats are celebrating a result that will most likely see them lose control of Congress. These are not the results anyone was expecting. Sarah Smith, BBC News, Washington.
The time is just after 6:15, our top story this evening. Nurses across the UK have voted to strike over pay for the first time in the union's 106-year history. And still to come, we highlight the issue of energy providers remotely flipping customers' smart meters to prepay mode.
And on BBC London, the boss of the English National Opera has dismissed a plan to move out of London, saying slashing its funds is not doable. And we'll have the latest on the Grenfell Tower public inquiry.
Right, we can now bring you one of the biggest stories of the day. Russia has ordered its troops to withdraw from the key city of Kherson, the highly prized regional capital that it captured in March, right at the start of the invasion. For weeks now, Ukrainian forces have been advancing slowly towards the city, keeping up the pressure on Russian forces. Now, the Russian commander in Ukraine says it is no longer possible to keep supplying its troops in the city of Kherson. So they are going to now retreat from the western bank of the river Dnipro, leaving the city and dig in again further east. It's a major blow for Russia and for President Putin. Our international editor, Jeremy Bowen, has spent the last few days with Ukrainians on the front line outside Kherson. We've been waiting for his report since we came on air. It's difficult to send it from Ukraine for obvious reasons, but we have just got it in the last few minutes, and here it is.
For days now, Ukrainian soldiers on the Kherson perimeter have been dismissing reports that the Russians were going to pull back. When we visited a mobile unit on the flatlands between Kherson and Mykolaiv, the closest Ukrainian-controlled city, the soldiers said they wouldn't believe the Russians were leaving until they could see them go. They took us on a mission to attack Russian positions. They guide their Soviet-era artillery with a commercially available drone made in China. Their command car is a 15-year-old BMW imported from Britain. It might have been a veteran of the school run. Now it's on bomb runs, passing on positions from the drone to adjust the gunner's aim. The Ukrainians claimed direct hits on positions in the large pocket of land Russians control west of the Dnipro River, which they'd have to leave if they pulled out of Kherson city. Leaving Kherson would be a devastating defeat for Russia. It was their biggest single prize since they invaded in February. In Moscow, General Sergei Surovkin, commander of Russian forces in Ukraine, made the announcement. He told a televised meeting of senior military leaders, including the defense minister, that Russia could not properly supply its troops on the west bank of the river. Ukraine's first response was to warn against premature celebrations. This week, we've been talking to Ukrainian soldiers and Kherson residents to try to gauge the mood there. You can't drive into Kherson from here because there's a front line in the way. And even if you could, the Russians don't allow independent journalists to operate there. So we have to try to piece together what's happening in a city that is, to all intents and purposes, cut off from the outside world. In Mykolaiv, I met a Ukrainian Special Forces officer who runs what he calls partisan warfare in Kherson. He didn't want to show his identity. He said harassing the occupiers doesn't just mean killing them.
The more effective it is, the worse it is for them. It makes them live in constant tension, constant fear. That's our goal, our task. It makes them think, we don't want to conquer, we want to go back to Russia.
Some Ukrainians under occupation in Kherson say they have seen changes in the city as rumors circulated this week that the Russians might pull back.
For 2 weeks or more, Kherson has been blocked. There is no crossing from the left bank to the right for civilians. As a result, the food and medicine is not delivered. If this continues for a long time, I don't know what people will eat and how they will receive basic medicine.
A few video snapshots of life now in Kherson have been posted. It's a city where Russian rubles circulate alongside Ukraine's currency, and the clocks now run on Moscow time. On the front line facing Kherson this week, Ukrainian soldiers warned that talk of a withdrawal might be the Russians trying to sucker them into a trap. Hearing it from the Russian commander in Moscow will make them less skeptical.
Jeremy Byrne there on the front line, along with his producer Kathy Long and cameraman Fred Scott. Well, let's go to Moscow now and our Russia editor Steve Rosenberg. And Steve, just put this in context, the significance of this moment and what it means for President Putin.
OK, well, if this really is the case, if Russia has taken the decision to retreat from Kherson, as the generals announced to the nation early this afternoon, that is a big deal. That would be a symbolic blow to the Russian authorities and an embarrassment for Vladimir Putin, because Kherson was the only Ukrainian provincial capital that the Russians managed to occupy since they invaded Ukraine back in February. And I remember back to the end of September, to that glittering ceremony in the Kremlin, when Vladimir Putin was looking very confident. He signed all kinds of documents and he claimed to have annexed Kherson region and 3 other Ukrainian territories, and that they would be Russia forever. Well, if this is really true, then that forever didn't last very long. Now, I watched that announcement being made on state TV earlier today. It was like watching a piece of TV theatre. You had the Russian commander reporting to the defence minister and recommending a retreat. Then the cameras cut to the defence minister, who said, I agree with you, the retreat should begin soon. The one actor absent from the stage there was the Russian President Vladimir Putin. It was as if the Kremlin wanted the military to deliver the bad news to the people and wanted to distance the president, distance Vladimir Putin from what will be seen here in Russia as a setback.
Steve Rosenberg with the latest there from Moscow. Thank you. The Northern Ireland Secretary has announced he's extending the deadline for calling a fresh Stormont election. There's been no Stormont government since February, as the DUP has refused to join a power-sharing executive. Chris Heaton-Harris told MPs the new 8th of December deadline can be extended by a further 6 weeks. He also said he was cutting the pay of Assembly members by around £14,000. Energy suppliers have been warned to think about vulnerable customers when they switch people from smart meters to prepayment ones. There are concerns that customers are not always told in advance, making it more likely that they fail to top up the meter and end up being disconnected. The BBC has discovered there was a big rise in the number of smart meters remotely changed to prepay mode last year, with some customers not realising it had happened. Here's our cost of living correspondent, Coletta Smith.
Once a smart meter is installed, it's a simple process for a supplier to flip you to prepayment mode at the push of a button. They don't have to apply for a warrant or install a physical box in your home. And most customers like Samantha didn't even know it was possible.
I didn't have any say in it at all. It was just done. And that's not okay. That's not a way to deal with things, and it's not a way to deal with people, not particularly now. If I didn't have any money to put an extra £10 on the meter, what would I have done?
So I understand you're having trouble with a prepayment meter, is that right?
The regulator has told me that 60,000 smart meters were remotely switched by suppliers just in the last few months. Debt charities are already seeing the impact on the most vulnerable.
There's a lot of benefit to be taken from people being on smart meters, but that remote switching process does mean that there is a risk that people might end up self-disconnecting. If they are unaware that they're on a prepayment meter, they might not top up. Essentially, this is disconnection by the back door.
Since we've started asking questions about this, the regulator has written to all suppliers, telling them to stick to the rules or face potential fines. The rules say that switching a smart meter remotely to prepay mode should only ever happen as a last resort, that customers should be told a week in advance, and that suppliers should give them all the information they need to make payments under the new system. Today, energy companies have said they'll change their behaviour.
It does seem as though, there are some mistakes being made, and it's important that Ofgem does take action. I'm glad the regulator's written to suppliers. Suppliers should be following the rules.
That protection is crucial as people struggle to keep the lights on. Coletta Smith, BBC News in Manchester.
Football now, and Wales manager Robert Page will announce the squad for his country's first Men's World Cup in 64 years at a special event this evening. Wales face the United States in their opening match in Qatar on the 21st of November. Our Wales correspondent Hal Griffith has more.
Flowing through every valley, permeating every part of the nation. Excitement about this World Cup can't be avoided. After a 64-year wait, the man who'll lead Wales to Qatar knows this tournament is special and controversial.
It's a massive tournament, and we're going into a culture where we respect. Whether we agree with it, again, is a completely different matter, and if we can make change for the better after that long term, then that's the aim for it.
Rob Page was raised in the Rhondda. This is where he wanted to announce the first World Cup squad since 1958. That ended in heartbreak. A goal by Pelé helped defeat Wales. Since then, it's been a history of missed opportunities.
Oh, and he's hit the crossbar!
Until now.
After such a long and painful wait, it's perhaps not a surprise that this is a huge moment for Wales, not just in a sporting sense, but as a way of celebrating a nation with its own political and cultural identity.
It's all wrapped up in the official song, Yma o Hyd, a Welsh language protest anthem that the players listen to before every game.
I told Gareth Bale when I met him, people are so impressed with your singing of Yma o Hyd, and he said, I only know the chorus, but I think he knows the verse by now.
When the squad is announced at this old Miners' Hall tonight, Gareth Bale will almost certainly be captain as Wales gets ready for the big stage. Howard Griffith, BBC News in the Rhondda Valley.
Time now to have a look at the latest weather. Louise Lear is here. It's still so warm, isn't it, for this time of year? What, early November? Are we going to see records broken?
I was out dog walking in my T-shirt this morning. We might not see records broken. We need to actually reach 22 degrees, can you believe it, which happened in 2015. That's the highest November temperature. We might see 19, though, in Scotland, potentially on Friday. So still incredibly mild.
And this is all temperature, heat that's coming up from the continent.
All due to the wind direction to the southwest. But warm but not necessarily dry, because for those of you that probably don't know, in the southeast we've had the wettest November on record for the first week of November. The rainfall has been quite phenomenal. We are desperate for rain, I know, but it could just spread the load a little bit, share the love, couldn't it really? But I can promise you something a little bit drier over the next few days. So if you do want to get out and enjoy some of the autumn colour and soak up some of the sunshine, the next few days might be misty and murky to begin with in the morning, but it should be largely fine and dry. For the next few hours, we have got some rain around, and this time it's in the far north of Scotland. Some of it quite heavy as it pushes its way steadily north and east. Here's that southwesterly flow driving in a lot of low cloud. That's going to be a story, I suspect, over the next couple of days. Not quite as mild as it's going to be through the night, 9 to 12 degrees to greet us first thing tomorrow morning. So if you've been watching the weather just recently, this high pressure is going to dry things up over the next few days. It's also going to drag in that southwesterly flow, and it's going to be fairly widespread across the country. You can see how the warmer rush sits as far north as Scotland. So yes, we've got some rain around, but generally with that southwesterly flow at this time of year, it does bring with it a lot of cloud, drizzly, misty, murky conditions first thing. Some of that cloud breaking up, windy with it as well. And the heaviest of the rain, gale force gusts of winds potentially in the far north and west of Scotland. Temperatures tomorrow around 15 or 16 degrees. That's 61 in terms of Fahrenheit. And then through Thursday evening into the early hours of Friday morning, those temperatures hardly falling away for some. So we could start off on Friday an incredibly mild day. Again, could be a little bit misty and murky out there. But through the day on Friday, we've still got that weather front sitting in the far north and west, maybe as far as central Scotland during the day. We still keep some cloud, which will hopefully break in places across central and southern parts of England and Wales. But look at the temperatures, 17, 18, possibly 19 degrees for one or two of us on Friday. And that could make it potentially the warmest armistice day on record. Heading into the weekend, want some more? Well, I can offer you something still dry, settled and relatively sunny, particularly in comparison to the weekend just past. A much better day, perhaps more cloud around for the second half of the weekend. Sophie.
Louise, thank you. And that is it from the six team. It's goodbye. Reece Chakrabarti will be here at 10. The news, though, continues on BBC One. It's time to join all our colleagues in the nations and regions for the news where you are. Goodbye.